Welcome back, everybody. Today we've got another featured build for you guys. We have got Eth0s with his Magicka Nightblade bomb build. And, well, this build is just savage. It is that build if you've ever wanted to just jump into a Zerg and turn them into this. Yeah, this is the build for you guys. So a massive shout out to Eth0s. Thank you so much for sending in this build, my man. Not only did he send the build in, but he also sent in all of this fine PvP footage, so we get to see this bad boy in action. Links to his YouTube channel, of course, down in the description, so if you guys want to show the support, go and drop this fine man a sub. And without further ado, let's take a look at this build, guys. So to start out, Eth0s has a High Elf on his Nightblade. Now, High Elf is a great choice for this build, and Eth0s does mention that High Elf and Dark Elf are both a good option because of the offensive kind of buffs that they provide. But he does mention Khajiit, and well, I think that's a fantastic choice for this build because it really benefits from the critical damage bonus that Khajiit gets. Now, High Elf and Dark Elf both give you that base max mag and that spell damage. However, Khajiit's going to give you that 10% critical damage, and at the end of the day, that's going to be a little bit more burst than the kind of base offensive stats will be. So without further ado, let's take a look at the rest of this build. He's got everything into maximum Magicka, giving us a nice bulky 38.5k max mag on the front bar, 24k HP, and 16.5k maximum stamina. So really nice max stat on this spec here. And the max stat is really high just to kind of offset the fact that this is a bomb build and it won't have really high sustain. So having that higher HP, that higher stam, and that higher mag just means that when you want to get those big smacks done, you're going to have the resource pools to do it. Now, taking a look at the recovery side of things, this build does not have very high sustain. If you have the perfected Black Rose staff, you're going to be rocking fully buffed on your back bar 1150 Magicka recovery with 802 stamina recovery and not much for health recovery because we are a vampire. Now, you don't need to run super low Magicka recovery on this build if you don't want to. You could always switch out your food from the Tri-Stat food to the Ghastly Eye Bowl, and that will give us a buffed value of almost 2k Magicka recovery on the back bar. So that's just going to allow this build to have a lot more sustain, but at the cost of that max HP as well as that maximum stamina. So it's kind of up to the user what route you want to go here. Eth0s likes to go for the full max stat food himself, so there you go. Now, moving on to our spell damage and our spell crit on this spec. When we buff up with the spell damage and get into Cloak here, we've got just shy of 4,000 spell damage, and then with the staff poke on the back bar, this build has 4.6k spell damage fully buffed. So quite a lot of spell damage to go with our max mag on this build, so really great just base offensive stats for the bomb build. Now the spell crit is only 42.8% on this build, and you don't even need to run the critical buff for this spec. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we take a look at the sets, but the spell critical value does not need to be really high. And something I did want to mention as well is that Eth0s is running the Balorg set. So the spell damage on this build can get much higher than 4,600. Could definitely push over 5k spell damage if you have enough ults stored up. Now, taking a look at the resists of this build, this is, of course, a bomb build, so it does not have crazy high resistances at all. We've got 17k spell resist and 15k physical resist with 1,299 critical resistance. Yeah, this is a glass cannon, full Divines bomb build, so the resists are not really very important for this spec. Now, taking a look at the Mundus, we've got the Shadow Mundus here, and yeah, full Divines as well. Eth0s has gone full Divines with the Shadow Mundus, 19% additional critical damage on this build with the Shadow. That is a massive amount of additional damage, and it works so well for this spec. And we'll talk about that when we get to the sets, but this is definitely the Mundus you want to run on this build. Now, we are running Vicious Death on this build too, but that will not be increased in damage by the Shadow because it cannot crit. However, Vicious Death is a really good set just for closing those kills. So once it kind of procs, it's already dealing so much base damage. This Mundus is mostly here just to make sure that we can get that Vicious Death to proc. Now, Eth0s is a vampire on this spec, and this is a great call for a bomb build in general, just because it allows us to get that Dark Stalker passive, giving us that bonus to our movement speed. Well, not really a bonus, but no negative to our movement speed when we enter stealth. So because Eth0s is, of course, rocking lower sustain, and he only wants to really hit that big bomb and then escape, this just allows him to conserve a lot of Magicka moving around because he can do it in crouch. And then, of course, for the food, guys, we did mention earlier that Eth0s is running the tri-stat food here for all of the max stats, and this is a great all-around option for sustain and just kind of durability to make sure you can hit that bomb without getting killed. But like I said, if you want to run a little bit more Magicka recovery so you can cloak a little bit more, you can go for the Ghastly Eye Bowl. Like I said, it is totally up to the user here. Now for the potions on this build, I did watch the gameplay, and Eth0s seemed to have run just kind of one potion in particular. It was the Alliance War Spell Drought, and that just gives max mag and the spell damage bonus. Because the spell crit bonus isn't super important for this build, it's not important that we get it from our potion here. So the Alliance Spell Drought is a good option. I don't have it here because we're on the PTS, but it's a great option just because, well, it's very easy to get because it costs AP. So it's kind of cheap and easy to get your hands on. Now, you could definitely go for the Restoration Potion on this build if you want. You don't need to run the spell damage buff at all either, because we do get the spell damage buff from the Sap Essence. So, you know, it's kind of up to the user. Do you want to have the spell damage buff going into the bomb or not? Usually it's better to have it going into the bomb, so I think having at least that spell damage buff is a good call, but it does open up the option of running the Restoration Potion if you guys want to give that a shot too. Now, taking a look at the gear he's got on this build, the first set is, of course, the Balorg set. This is going to give the spell damage, and then when we use our ultimate, it's going to give us spell damage equivalent to the ultimate, twice the ultimate spent for 10 seconds. So Soul Tether is the bomb ultimate of choice, so this is going to be a minimum of 300 spell damage, so this will push us easily over 5k spell damage when we use our ultimate. Just giving Eth0s that really big bomb with his tether, which is what we're looking for on this build. And of course, if you just stack up a whole bunch of ultimate, you can get more and more spell damage out of this set. Now, taking a look at the next set that Eth0s has got, it is actually Mechanical Acuity, and this is such a brilliant slot for this build. So we get the spell damage in the 3-piece, and then we get some max Magicka on the 4-piece. A little bit of max stam, which is going to be nice for the sustain side of things, but otherwise not too terribly important. But that 5-piece, when we deal direct damage, we have a 15% chance to gain unerring mechanical vision for 5 seconds, causing our attacks to always be a critical strike, and this is on an 18-second cooldown. This is why this build does not need a high crit chance, because when we go for the bomb on this spec, the proc stat going off, the Soul Tether into, of course, the Sap Essence, we're definitely going to proc that mechanical vision. So yeah, Eth0s can get just a massive amount of critical damage stacked and just rely on the guaranteed crit chance from hitting a ton of targets with the bomb. It just plays into the fact that proc stat is going to deal more damage when we hit multiple targets as well. So yeah, tons of synergy with this build and an absolutely brilliant slot. And this set right here is why I think that Khajiit is probably the best race for this build. Now, taking a look at the next set we've got here, Eth0s, of course, has gone with Vicious Death. And this is going to be, well, your best bet for bombing in general. We get spell damage, max mag, and spell critical. When you kill a player, they violently explode for 22k flame damage, almost 23k, and that's to all other enemy players in a 4-meter radius. This is absolutely fantastic. This is what makes bombs work. Now, of course, this is a critically focused build with how the damage kind of works out on it. But, you know, Vicious Death, we don't need to add a lot to this tooltip. The tooltip is already so high. We just need to make sure we can get this proc to go off. And, yeah, the bomb will happen. So there you go. And then finally, the last set that he's got on the back bar is the Black Rose Restoration Staff. Now, you don't need to get the perfected version of this. There is a much easier, just normal version to get that won't give you the mag recovery as well. But the important bit is that Major Vitality on the healing ward for the 30% additional healing. This is just going to be absolutely fantastic for keeping yourself alive, whether you successfully killed your opponents, but there's some left over, or if you're just trying to escape. Yeah, this just makes healing ward a much better skill. Now, for the traits on the weapons, we've got Infused with the weapon spell damage on the backstaff here. This is a really fantastic just backstaff for the Nightblade. The nice thing about the healing staff, too, is you can give a quick poke, weapon swap, and then go into your cloak, and you can quickly cancel your light attack without actually exiting stealth for much time, if any at all. So it allows you to just get this proc right before you go for your bomb as well. So just a nice little additional bump to your damage. Now, on the front bar here, Eth0s has gone with Dual Sharpened on the Vicious Death swords. I like the dual sharpen choice because this is going to up all outgoing damage from the Vicious Death and from the base damage as well. The only change that you could make here is go maybe Nirnhoned on the main weapon. You'll lose a little bit of Vicious Death damage, but you should gain a little bit more base damage elsewhere. So it's just kind of up to you what you want to do there. But the reason he didn't go for any precise, of course, is because, well, we've got the Mechanical Acuity set. The crit chance is not important, so Sharpened is definitely pretty BIS for that burst. Now, for the enchants here, he's gone with the Oblivion damage enchant. To be perfectly honest, for single target, it's not a huge deal. You could actually go for the minor vulnerability poison if you wanted. Really up to the user here, but yeah, the front bar enchants aren't super important for a bomb spec like this. Now, taking a look at the jewelry, he's gone full infused with spell damage. This is just going to be the best outgoing damage option, especially coming out of stealth. Nightblade gets a bonus to their spell damage as well, so yeah, this is just going to be the best option to give us that biggest amount of outgoing burst on the Nightblade. And then for the gear, guys, full Divines with maximum Magicka. And yeah, that's just to play into that Shadow Mundus and give us the max mag for that outgoing damage as well. Now, taking a look at the skills that Eth0s has gone for here, the first ability we've got is Concealed Weapon, and yeah, you can see right off the bat, he's got some pretty savage tooltips on this build. An 11k Concealed Weapon on the bomb spec, so pretty big beefy damage going into it. Now, this, of course, is going to be here for that single target spike if we need it on this build, and it is also going to be the stun for this build outside of the ultimate. We can stun people out of cloak with the Concealed Weapon, which is really awesome. And then the really big whammy is that bonus to our movement speed. 25% bonus movement speed while we're in our cloak, very important, and this applies to our sneak for Vampirism as well, so really nice too. Now, the next ability that we've got here is Sap Essence, and this is such an important ability for the Bomblade. This is pretty much the AoE that you spam after you've delivered your bomb, and you want to make sure that everything around you is going to explode. If anything's left standing, or if they're close to getting that explosion, you go for the Sap Essence. Not only is it a fantastic AoE damage, but it will also heal you while you're attacking, allowing you to just stay there and apply more pressure for longer. Now, if the enemy is hit, you also gain the Major Brutality and Sorcery buffs. So yeah, really awesome there because we get the Sorcery buff that we don't have from the potion if you choose not to run it there. But like I said, you might find yourself in the situation where you can't deliver your bomb with the Sorcery up if you don't have something to proc it off before you attack. So yeah, it's kind of up to you what you want to do there. I would recommend having both potions on hand so you just get what you need when you need it. Now, the next skill that Eth0s has got, of course, Camouflaged Hunter. This is that minor berserk. Very important. We land that crit from an enemy's flank, which is from the side. 8% additional damage. This affects all outgoing damage on the build, including the Vicious Death proc. So very important that we get this buff here. And then finally, we've got the Shadowy Disguise, and this is going to be access to, well, our cloak. And of course, it's a guaranteed crit out of stealth. But I think most importantly, we have access to stealth to make sure we can deliver a deadly smack and then escape afterwards. Now, the next skill we've got here is Inner Light, and this one I'm just going to talk about real quick. Eth0s is actually a console player, and if you watch the footage, you will have seen that. And he actually runs Shadow Image on the front bar here, so he can run Rapids on the back bar, because on console, he has a tough time just dealing with the whole Rapid swap, and I totally feel him there. Console lag can be tough, and in and out of combat stuff can be tough to deal with as well. On PC, I have an add-on for it. So on PC, I would recommend running the Inner Light here. If you're on console and you don't mind constantly switching the Rapids on and off, you can run the same bar here. But if not, you will run Shade here instead of Inner Light. Like I said, we don't need that crit bonus. All we get here really is that maximum Magicka bonus for additional burst. And then finally, guys, for the ultimate on the front bar, we have got the one and only Soul Tether. This is going to be the burst ultimate of choice. It's going to stun everyone around you, allowing you to quickly follow up with your Sap Essence and hopefully get those nice, big, fat, vicious death explosions. And of course, it heals you while you're attacking. So a lot of incoming healing while you deliver your bomb. Very, very fantastic. Part of what makes Nightblade so good at bombing is not only do they have the best delivery system, but while they're doing the bomb, they're actively healing themselves, which is really awesome. So taking a look at the back bar here, we've got a lot of really important buffs and defensive skills, as well as the proc stat. Now, the first ability we've got here is Race Against Time, and this is going to be access to that Major Expedition, that Snare immunity as well, and of course that Minor Force buff for the additional critical damage. Very important that we have that buff on this build. Now, taking a look at the next skill, we got Healing Ward, and we got the Black Rose Restoration Staff to give us the additional 30% healing power when we use the Healing Ward. The Healing Ward's just going to put a shield over us, increasing in strength depending on how much we're damaged, and it will heal us for 41% of the shield's remaining strength every second while it is active. So a really nice, just low HP reactionary heal. It's very expensive, so this is kind of the oh crap heal you want to use on this build. Now, the next skill that we've got is Shadow Image, and this is just fantastic for that Nightblade kite game. It's going to allow you to set the image down, and then you can deliver the bomb and teleport out of there safely, whether the bomb goes well or not. It just gives you a really good option, especially on a Magicka Nightblade, to escape something that could be very stamina intensive to get out of. Now, this of course will apply the minor maim to an opponent too, and inflict a little bit of damage, but mostly it's here for that teleport. Now, the next skill we've got is Rapid Regeneration, and this is going to be, I think, the primary heal for this build because, one, it is the cheapest heal that we've got, and then two, well, it's a really strong heal over time. When you're higher on HP or you just want to make sure you have a heal over time up, if you're susceptible, this is the heal that you're going to go for. Just a good defensive utility all around for this build. And then finally, guys, we have got Proxy Debt. And yeah, this is what makes bombs happen as well. You set the proc stat up after 8 seconds. It's going to explode, dealing 7k magic damage to all enemies in the area, increasing by 25% per enemy that you hit with it. So let's just take a quick look at our tooltip on the front bar for the proc stat here. We're going to buff up for you guys as well and get into stealth. And yeah, we got a 9k proc stat. You hit 4 targets. That's an 18k proc stat. And you guys can do the math. That just keeps scaling up and up and up. This is going to deliver the most deadly smack out of the bomb, most likely for the build. And that's just because we're going to be hitting a lot of targets with it. And like I said, we are running the Mechanical Acuity set. So yeah, Eth0s just taken real good advantage of that mechanic of hitting a lot of players to get more damage out of it. And then for the ultimate, guys, Eth0s has gone with Light's Champion. And this is just going to be a fantastic defensive ultimate, a lot of healing over time, and of course access to that Major Force buff for that additional critical damage. So yeah, there you go. I think this ultimate you'll likely use more defensively than anything else. You could honestly also go for the Sigil ultimate too if you wanted, but Nightblade already has the Shade, so I do really like the Light's Champion choice for that big bulk healing that it provides. And finally, let's take a look at the champion points on this spec. Starting off in the tower tree, we've got 1 point in Siphoner and 66 in Warlord. Eth0s with a big focus on Warlord here, and I totally understand this because when you're bombing, likely the first thing to happen after you deliver your bomb is someone's going to stun you. So this is likely where you're going to be spending most of the stamina after delivering the bomb anyway. So yeah, definitely good one to put points in. Now in the lover tree, Eth0s has gone with 75 Arcanist, 27 Mooncalf, and 37 in Tenacity. Big focus on Arcanist, of course, for that Magicka recovery. If you want to go for the higher Magicka recovery route, this is really going to push that mag sustain for you. And then a little bit in Mooncalf to give us a little bit more stam sustain. Eth0s is a high elf, so he gets some nice stam sustain from that as well. And then Tenacity, we've got Resto Staff on the back bar, so this is going to work really well with that. Now the good passive we get here, of course, is Wind Running, the additional movement speed. It's just 2%, but man, for a bomb build in World PvP, everything counts. Now, moving on to the Shadow Tree, Eth0s has got 51 Tumbling and 13 Shadow Ward. Big focus on Tumbling, not a lot in Shadow Ward, and this makes sense, again, because the delivery of the bomb, he'll likely get stunned, and then you want to roll, and then get back into Cloak. If you're stuck blocking, you're probably going to get killed on the bomb build anyway, because you got so many guys attacking you, so this just makes sense from a gameplay perspective, so there we go. Now, moving on to the Apprentice Tree, Eth0s has stacked this tree, 53 Spell Erosion, 75 Elemental Expert, and 61 in Elfborn. Big focus on Elemental Expert to increase that outgoing just base damage. This will also increase the tooltip damage on the Vicious Death set. Elfborn with a lot of focus as well, because we have such a lot of critical damage on this build, and the critical damage is just going to be guaranteed with the Mechanical Acuity set. So yeah, really get to use this passive a lot on this build. And then finally, Spell Erosion with the least amount of points for that spell penetration. We have the Sharpened Weapons as well, so we just have really good spell penetration all around. Now, the important passives we get, of course, are the Spell Precision passive for that 9% additional critical chance. Now, taking a look at the Atronach tree, we've got 81 Mastered Arms for that increased direct damage, and that's really all we need here for the Bomblade. Now, moving on to the red tree, Eth0s has got 66 Ironclad and 54 in Resistant. Nothing in these two here. Nothing in Spell Shield. Not a lot of focus on much outside of reducing incoming direct damage and reducing incoming critical damage. The biggest weakness of this build is, of course, going to be the burst after delivering a bomb. So, yeah, this just makes sense defensively for the build. And then in the Lady Tree, Eth0s has got 56 Thick Skin, 37 Elemental, and 37 in Hardy. Personally, I think he's got a little bit much in Thick Skin, but this is during the Scalebreaker patch, so I totally understand this approach, especially if you can't enter stealth and you need to heal things away, which is why he's got so much healing power on the build too. So there we go. But, you know, if you're not playing this during the Scalebreaker patch, I think you can opt out of Thick Skin with these points here and just put them elsewhere, perhaps even in the Bastion for the 20 points he's got here, just to give you a little bit more healing power on your healing ward. But there you go, guys. That is the build. Let's take a look at that footage. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into that PvP commentary. So this is, of course, a bomb build, so the footage is going to be very fast and furious. Starting off with our first smack here, he sets down the proc stat and then goes inside, drops the ultimate as the proc stat goes off, and then into the soul tether. And he manages to get out with his cloak. Oh, just at the end, I think they finish him off there. But there you go. We get to see the kind of intro to the bomb there, and now we get to see a little bit of Eth0s setting the combo here. So a big part of playing a bomb build is also being patient and knowing the right time to drop the smack on your opponents. And there we see he sets down his proc stat again, and it's about to go off. He goes into his ultimate. There's the proc stat into the sap essence. So much damage into the group there, and he just takes out a huge chunk of players again. And of course, that last clip really highlighting the amount of damage you can get with the proc stat if you hit so many targets on this build. Now here, Eth0s sees a lot of players coming in on the resource here, so he waits for them to wipe the flag and start to sit in a nice pile on the flag for him, and he's going to set down his combo again, and there's the big explosion into the sap essence, and down they go. Now, something to take note in the footage here, of course, is that his character will turn blue when the Mechanical Acuity buff goes off on him. So we get a good indication of how effective this Mechanical Acuity buff is. Every single bomb so far, he has procced the Mechanical Acuity set, including the last one there, and he finishes all those players off with that smack on the flag here. Now in this fight, again, he sees a lot of players at the top here. He's just going to set his buffs, set down the proc stat. He's going to make his way up to the top here. He's got the critical damage bonus as well. And there goes the proc stat into the ultimate and the sap essence, finishing off the last player there. And again, we see that Mechanical Acuity proc for that 100% crit chance on that full Divine's 19% critical damage. Yeah, we really see the bombs work here. And again, just the nice smooth delivery. There's the ultimate to stun everybody into the sap essence. He doesn't finish the tank off there, and he just decides to go out with his cloak again. Now, something I do want to note about the footage as well is that we see Eth0s doing a lot of setting the combo on these guys and just being patient with how he hits them. If you guys want to add a little bit more mag sustain to this build, you will have a little bit easier time getting in and out when you deliver those combos. But it's up to you guys. I think that one thing that we've noticed in the footage here is that when Eth0s does get the bomb, he still takes a lot of damage, even with the successful bomb. And there we see right away these guys turn around and nuke him, but so many dead bodies with that smack. So I'm gonna leave you guys to enjoy the last few explosions here. Again, a massive shout out to Eth0s for sending in this fantastic build. A link, of course, to his YouTube down in the description below. Be sure to check this man's channel out. If you guys are interested in sending in your own builds or clips for the top 5, you can send them to KristoferESO at hotmail.com. We're sponsored by What the Fast, a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games for the first month, free to try in the description below if you guys want to give them a shot. And last but not least, if you guys really love the show and you want to help support it, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Without your help, I wouldn't be able to do this job that I love, so thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for helping out if you choose to do so, and I'll see you next time. Big shout out again to Eth0s. Have a great night, everybody.